Today we are going to get into one topic. Today we are going to review Tron Legacy on 4K Blu-ray. This just came out last Tuesday, I believe, along with the original 1982 Tron. However, we are only going to be talking about Tron Legacy today. So let's go over a few tech specs really quick. This movie did come out in 2010, so about 15 years ago now. It is rated PG-13. Runtime is 125 minutes. It does have a 4K DI. It is newly remastered, but keep in mind that this was shot back in 2010 with 3D in mind. So it was shot with native 3D cameras, which is only in 1080p. So of course they would have to upscale this up to 4K. Aspect ratio, even though it wasn't a huge deal back then, does have the IMAX aspect ratio, or you could say it's open matte, whatever way you want to say it, 1.78 to 1 or 2.39 to 1, and it does have a brand new Dolby Atmos mix. So as you guys know, if you are a home theater enthusiast, you've been into this game for a long time, the original Tron Legacy on Blu-ray, especially the 3D Blu-ray, kind of demo-worthy discs for since it came out, right? Every time that I've always reviewed audio gear, typically subwoofers, one of my go-tos, actually, this is definitely one of my top go-tos, is going to be Tron Legacy, just because the light cycle battle is straight up demo-worthy. It's got fantastic bass, and for only 7-channel mix, it has really good surround sound as well. So this is always on my playlist every single year. I must watch this clip and also the aerial battle at the end of the movie maybe 20 times or more a year. So every time I do a recalibration on some speakers in my home theater, if I get new speakers into review, if I get new subwoofers in, this movie always gets popped on every time my calibration is done, just because the bass is so good in it. Like I said, the original 7-channel mix, demo worthy, and I was a bit afraid that we were going to get a subpar mix with this, seeing as it's from Disney. And lately the trend has been taking Atmos mixes and then just really cutting them off on the low end, just nuking the bass altogether. I went back and forth with the regular Blu-ray mix and this new Atmos mix, and besides maybe 2 or 3 dB difference, it could be the same, but I think it's about 2-3 dB difference between the two. I feel like the Atmos version is just a little bit quieter. I have no scientific facts behind this, but it feels like the Atmos is maybe 2 or 3 dB quieter. It's negligible. It really is negligible, but if you just bump that volume up just a little bit, it sounds pretty much exactly the same. Now, despite this having an Atmos mix, I'm going to say that it's not a drastic difference between the original mix. So if we go in, we're just going to kick this off at about 4 minutes, 33 seconds in. There's a little scene here with Sam as a young kid. There's like rain outside, and it switches over to Sam driving through a tunnel. This is when the soundtrack kicks in. And you would think at the beginning of the movie where the rain and stuff would be coming overhead. Not much happening there. Also, he's driving through the tunnel here as well. You would think you would hear some echo and some ambiance inside this tunnel, which you do not hear at all. So the Atmos height effects do not ever come on during this scene, which I think they should have placed some kind of Atmos effects here, especially during the beginning part where they're in the house, the kid's running away. Obviously, there's rain here. Rain should be coming from above. And then again, as the scene transitions over to the tunnel, there should be some overhead here. There's a little bit there for like a split second, but other than that, you do not hear the ambiance of the tunnel coming from overhead as you would in real life. So that is a little disappointment on my end. However, if we're taking this into the context of being a 7-channel mix, then it sounds pretty good. Let's move on over to 17 minutes, 44 seconds. This has some really nice ambiance. If we're just talking about lower channel activity, here they're out by the docks at Sam's place. He lives in some sort of a garage or warehouse. And outside in the environment, you'll hear the seagulls in the background. You can hear the river or the waterfront, just the water I guess, swaying in the background. And there's also some atmospheric effects like wind. So this scene has some really nice lower channel atmospherics. And as you can see at the end there, we get a little bit of a taste in the top channels. Let's move on over to 23 minutes, 51 seconds. This is our first shot where Sam goes into the grid, and we do get a flyover of the recognizer. That's those big giant ships. There is a flyover when the recognizer makes its first appearance, and we get some pretty good rumble here as well. This is when the soundtrack really starts to kick in. And also, this is when we first transition over to the IMAX aspect ratio. So again, not much going on in the height channels. However, the lower channels with the musical score, when that kicks in, that does kick in quite nicely. I'm going to say one of my top 10 mixes for audio in a movie soundtrack ever. This movie. That's why it's always on my playlist every year when I do speaker reviews. But again, here you can see there's nothing happening in the top channels. Well, there we go. We got a little something there. But otherwise, not much going on in the top channels. And if you guys haven't realized that this mix is essentially a 7.1.2 channel mix. I have 6 top channels here. So every time something would kick on, just like right now, only the top middles will be active. However, if you have 4 top channels, then all 4 of your top channels will be active. So I might be doing myself a little bit of a disservice by having 6. So I'm not getting as much immersion as you guys with 4. But just keep that in mind that if you are running with a higher channel count, only the top middle will be active. And also your second set of surrounds, notably labeled here, left surround 2, right surround 2, those never become active. Also, the wide channels also never become active as well. Let's move on over to 32 minutes. This is just a really quick clip. This is when he's fighting that guy in the grid. And in this scene, this is pretty good. Overhead, you'll hear the announcer's voice. And also as things are happening, you will hear the crowd in the background as well. So this fills out the sound stage rather nicely with some overhead vocals and then the sound of cheering going on in the background. And this happens during this whole battle scene where he's in the grid playing the game. So that's pretty effective. That's at 32 minutes in, or just that entire place, that entire scene. Let's kick this off at 41 minutes. This is the big light cycle scene. This is just demo worthy, straight up. 100% demo worthy as far as the Blu-ray and the 3D Blu-ray mix is concerned in my book. There is very light overhead, not too much as you can see here. Most of the action is going to remain in the lower 7 channels. Bass response here is just as good as what was on the standard Blu-ray, the 3D Blu-ray, so it hits just as hard, it digs just as low. The bass is pretty much identical to the original mix that we got on the older discs. So that is a big plus. And then the lower channel activity, pretty much exactly the same as well. Very slight top channel stuff happening here in the top left-hand speaker. Not much going on the right-hand side. So again, this will sound pretty much what it sounds like on the original Blu-ray. You will hear the explosions when things are blowing up, when the cycles are blowing up. And then when the guys are traversing through the different channels, front to back, left to right, sounds the same as the Blu-ray. Again, not much happening in the top channels, unfortunately. So we're going to skip over to this, where let's move on over to the third act at 1 hour. At 1 hour, 18 minutes in. This is the air battle. This is with the light planes. I think that's what they're called, light planes. If you are a fan of Top Gun Maverick, this is from the same director, Joseph Kosinski. You guys should probably notice that a lot of these aerial battles look exactly the same. It's like he took what happened in Tron Legacy and moved it over to Top Gun Maverick. So a lot of the aerial moves are exactly the same. We get a lot of really good movement here in the lower channels. If you've heard the original Blu-ray, this sounds pretty much exactly the same. Not too much again, except in the top left-hand side. I think that's mostly just a little bit of musical extension up top. but really not much going on at all in the top channels. This is very reminiscent of Top Gun Maverick as well, where most of the stuff will remain in the lower channels. So I was expecting this to be just a straight up knockout as far as being a 100% new Atmos remix, but if you wanted to take the regular 7-channel mix and just upscale it, upmix it using Neural X or Dolby Surround Upmixer, you will get a much more immersive feel because as you can see here, not much happening at all in the top channels. Kind of a bummer because this would have been a true standout for a fresh new Atmos mix. Still really good movement though, however, in the lower channels, just not as aggressive at all in this mix. Now, as far as bass response is concerned, this looks, again, like I said many times, just like the regular Blu-ray. I get this is what I'm getting in my house, in my theater. So I am getting some substantial output above 60 hertz, down to about 30, starts dropping off at around 30. If you have some giant subwoofers in your place that are capable of infrasonics, I mean, it's not coded in the mix. However, with your in-room response, you should get some pretty good infrasonics during the light cycle scene. Also during any one of the big battle scenes, you should get some pretty good extension in your room if your subwoofers are capable. Some solid output between 60 and 30 hertz, then it starts dropping off from there. So overall, this mix, not what I was expecting for an Atmos mix. I still enjoyed it. I mean, basically the bones of the 7-channel mix is all here. I would say as far as Atmos mixes go, it is kind of disappointing in that aspect. But if you're a fan of the original mix, basically that's all still there with a sprinkling of Atmos top channel effects. And then bass response is just as good. Dialogue also just as good. So not really disappointed overall. It's really good, just as, if we're taking it at face value as being an Atmos mix, not so great. All right, now as far as video quality is concerned, I said earlier that this does still retain those full screen shots, which will kick in at around 29 minutes or so. This is the first shot of the recognizer. You can see Sam standing in the center of the screen there, so that will fill up your screen. These are really impressive looking, but if I'm being honest with you, if you've seen the regular Blu-ray, a lot of this, I want to say most of this does look like just a standard 1080p Blu-ray, just upscaled, which not surprising because this was shot in 1080p. This might be an unpopular opinion because I know people think this is like really spectacular or whatever. But listen, I've watched the Blu-ray so many times. I've watched the 1080p 3D Blu-ray so many times. Even if you kick the 3D mode into 1080p and you have a quality television set, this looks very similar to just 1080p, just being upscaled. The big thing here is obviously going to be the HDR, Dolby Vision, whichever way you're looking at it. The colors are definitely better. They're more vibrant, especially, like the specular highlights. These shine really nicely. They have really good pop. The teal color palette, the blue neon lights, all of that stuff looks fantastic. It's just, like this stuff here. This stuff is, I know this was shot digitally, but there is a fair amount of digital noise or digital film grain, whatever you want to call it. I don't know if they added any faux film grain to it or not, but there is a fair bit of noise in this image that does come across as film grain, despite it being shot digitally. So keep that in mind as well. You'll notice this mostly a lot in the darker shots. So it's almost like low level noise if your digital camera doesn't have the dynamic range to do low light very well. You will get that digital noise, which a lot of these darker scenes do have in them. So you will notice that noise in the really dark shots, and really just overall, it does have a fair bit of noise / grain in the image. Now there are some shots that also do look really good that could possibly pass for something shot in 4K. Like this stuff here, like some of these close-up shots look excellent. I mean, you could see the foundation, the makeup on her face that is very caked on. However, you can still count the strands of hair. You can see her eyelashes, all that good stuff. The very nice fine lines on her face, the nice texturing on her latex outfit as well look really great. That's a standout shot there. We have, of course, the CG, the de-aging of Jeff Bridges. As far as I can tell, going back and forth, they didn't touch this up. They didn't go back and try to deep fake his face on top of the CG de-aging, which I think would have been a prime time opportunity to go back and just de-age him. I know a lot of you guys are like, you shouldn't touch it if it's a certain way. You should leave it as is. But I think in this scenario here, I think if they would have just went back and just deep faked Jeff Bridges' face on here to make it look more natural, which I believe if you go on YouTube, you do a search for Tron Legacy deepfake, you can see where people have made this look almost realistic by using the deepfake technology that you can do at your house. So this still looks like that uncanny valley look. It still looks, rubbery fake. I think they might have used a little bit of maybe some AI upscaling here and there just to touch up the image. I mean, it looks clean. It does look very clean. And, I'm not really complaining too much. I would say it looks better or as good as what it did on the regular Blu-ray, but nothing mind-bending. They didn't go back and fix this at all. It still looks pretty much what it looks like. Again, another shot that looks really great. Again, these close-up shots look fantastic. They could pass for 4K. You could see all the detail on his face, the costume work, the red lights for HDR. This is going to really pop on your Dolby Vision display if you have a really good quality television set. Again, here the reds and the oranges, they look fantastic in HDR. So I'm going to give this the edge over the standard Blu-ray for sure. And again, this scene here, this is clearly shot in 1080p. This is upscaled as well. Did they use some AI for this? Possibly. Another shot that looks great in 4K HDR. And pretty much any time you're going to see shots like this with just the lights glowing and all that, going to be standouts. This is a good look at 4K for sure, 100%. Nice 4K, nice 2K upscale. No doubt about that. Now, there are these scenes here that are clearly meant to be seen in 3D. So if I'm going to compare this to the 3D version, now if you take into consideration 3D glasses have a slight tint to them, the 3D glasses are going to enhance your black levels, and they're going to look better, I think, than what's on the 4K. Also, these shots, like this shot here, also like this shot here, any of the stuff that happens in the arena, especially this one here, this is all CG digital. These were meant to be seen in 3D. You really do lose this. Sometimes it comes across as a bit soft and kind of flat looking. Like the blacks, they're definitely more grayish. But if you put 3D into the mix with your glasses, this really enhances the black levels. Obviously, this is going to pop out. The background is really going to be inset really deep into the screen. This little round part towards the top curves around from foreground all the way to the background. And you're missing that in the 4K version. We have, again, the light cycle scene. This should reach deep into your screen, which is missing on the 4K version. This stuff here as well, 3D version, you get that soft bokeh in the background. Sam is in focus in the foreground. In 3D version, that pops, not so much on the 4K version. This scene as well, this comes across as kind of soft on the 4K version. The fireworks in the background should be really deep inset into your screen. We get a lot of good depth here on the 3D version, which again is missing on the 4K version. Also, there is a bit of noise in this image as well. I don't know, they probably added that in post because this was all CG, so. But I feel like this looked cleaner in 3D. And then what else do we have here? And of course, all this stuff here with the recognizer. When this kicks into, if you have a projector screen and you're watching this in 3D, when this scene first pops, I mean, this just takes up your whole field of view in 3D. It looks magical in 3D. This is one of the best 3Ds I have. Again, I go back to this several times a year, not only for the audio, but for the 3D as well. Especially if I'm reviewing a projector, like one of the DLP projectors. These are really good for that because they really can show off the rainbow effect. I mean, even if you're not watching 3D, if you're now watching the 4K version on a DLP projector, this is really going to highlight the rainbow effect and really exasperate that rainbow effect. Anyways, is this spectacular looking 4K Blu-ray? I think it's a really good looking 4K Blu-ray. I think I think if you just take your regular standard 1080p Blu-ray and you run it through your television set, if you have a top quality TV set like a Sony, Samsung, LG, OLED, I'm gonna say it's not gonna look too dissimilar from your standard Blu-ray. I know some of the reviews out there are probably just giving it glowing reviews, but I'm gonna say it looks, a lot of the times it just looks like a Blu-ray, just really a little bit more refined. Some shots do in fact look like they could pass for really crispy 4K for sure. Some of those close-up shots that I showed do look really good, but upon just popping in the disc right from the start, I was just thinking, this looks like a Blu-ray. Mind you, I do have a 98-inch Bravia 5. I am projecting on a 150-inch Sony using the projector 8. And sometimes when I would go back and I would watch the standard Blu-ray, when I'm doing other reviews just for audio, I would typically watch the 2K Blu-ray. Sometimes I'll take the 3D Blu-ray convert it down to 2K. And, when I went back and forth, I didn't see, it wasn't like a night and day difference. The biggest difference, of course, is going to be with the HDR. The HDR really does pop. It does get those specular highlights do really jump off the screen. The color saturation does look very nice. Just the resolution wise, I wouldn't say mind-blowing whatsoever. It looks like a really good upscale 1080p transfer. So for my score, video score, I'm going to go with an 8.4 for video. Audio-wise, if you're going to take this as being a Dolby Atmos mix, I have 26 channels in my theater. Only seven of them worked, and then only 2 of my top channels worked. So if you have a really nice, really big high channel count system, only 7 channels are going to work, which isn't going to be too different from the original Blu-ray. You will get a little bit more extra stuff, like you get the recognizers. Those have a couple flyovers in this movie. I believe there is a chopper during the start of the movie when Sam is on top of the car and the cops are surrounding the car that he's sitting on top of. There is a chopper flyover there. There's a couple of flyovers towards the end during the air battle. Not too much. It kind of flickers on and off. And then I think that's really it, man. I mean, there's so little in the overheads that I actually couldn't remember it. I mean, there's a little bit of light musical extension up top, but not too much. There's not too much. I mean, I showed you everything here. Those are just a few clips that I thought were standouts, which didn't have too much top channel activity. So if I'm going to take this as just being an audio, a Dolby Atmos mix, I'm going to give it, I'm just going to give it an 8, just a straight up 8. Now, I've never reviewed the 3D version formally, but if I'm going to compare it to the 3D version, 3D for this gets a 10. This is this is a demo-worthy 3D disc. 10 for 3D video, and then for 3D audio, since it's only 7 channels, it's one of the best 7-channel mixes you can get out there. I know the 7-channel version sounds basically the same as the Dolby Atmos version, but since you got to think about the Atmos version as being an Atmos version, that's only going to be an 8. Whereas the 3D version being a 7-channel version, I'm also going to give the 3D audio being a 7-channel mix a 10. So 4K version, 8.4 for video. Dolby Atmos audio, 8 for audio. If you're coming from the 3D version, I'm giving that a 10 for 3D video, and I'm also going to give it a 10 for 3D audio for being a 7-channel mix. But those are my scores on the new 4K transfer of Tron Legacy on 4K Blu-ray. Also, my thoughts on the 3D Blu-ray as well. Is your experience different than mine? Would you have given it a higher score? Leave your thoughts down below and let me know. Also, let me know which one you would prefer, the 3D disc or the 4K disc. Leave those comments. Of course, I will leave some links down below in this video's description. As always, guys, thanks for watching. If you want, you can follow me on social media, or if you want to join me on Patreon, I do have a Patreon. That's patreon.com/Shane Lee. I do give away some great deals on audio and video gear, We have a great community of folks over there. If you want to chat with me 24/7, we have a really good chat going on there, discussion that goes on 24/7. We're always having a good time in the chat there. Of course, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you in the next video.